Greetings, upstanders. Dr. O here, and to be clear, I am not a Zoran Mamdani hater. I am a supporter of him. I'm a supporter of his campaign. I appreciate everything that he did, and the person he is in terms of representation. And I think that is a very powerful example that can inspire many other people, to get involved in this thing we call the American political process. And I'm very clear. I've been very clear about that. Having said that, my problem is with media portrayals of other candidates. And I know that whether we're talking about sports, whether we're talking about politics, whether we're talking about entertainment, somebody wins a Grammy or an Oscar, or somebody, wins the pennant, or they win an NBA title, NFL. We in our society, we become the prisoners of the moment. And that particular person is the greatest person to ever play the game, to ever run for office, to ever sing a song. And I think that is problematic because it's disrespectful to history. I was reading, being here down in DC with Mayor Bowser not running again, Councilwoman Janeese Lewis George has announced that she's going to be running for mayor and is running on a, what people are calling, democratic socialist message, and people are calling her the Mamdani of the DC election. Or there was a person who ran in Minneapolis for mayor, and people called him, because he had the alliteration, the Mamdani of Minneapolis. And like, Mamdani's in his mid 30s, and people are acting like what he did he created. And when you look at pieces in like The Nation, or you look at the work of Abby Phillips in her new book and everything, it bothers me that people are looking at him as the creator of the campaign, that type of campaign that he ran on, and it just ignore people like Harold Washington in Chicago, in that mayor's race back in the day, and ignore the campaign of Jesse Jackson, as well as ignore the campaign of Obama. And to be quite honest, it's that the ignoring of that history, to ignore the people that came before you, that lay down the message, the conversations about affordability, the idea about bringing in new coalitions, the idea of respect for human rights and justice. These are not new. They did not start with Mamdani. And if every candidate that's going to be running for mayor in some particular place, or a city council area, or governor, is going to be called the Mamdani effect, the Mamdani of this, and so on and so forth, we're ignoring history. But that's kind of what we do as a country, and I think that's problematic. I mean, I feel like if you actually talk to Mamdani, if you talk to his father, who's a legend in academic spaces and Africanist spaces, they would tell you that they didn't create this. They didn't bring this stuff. What Jackson did help create. Even Obama talked about this. He talked about being at Harvard and seeing, Jesse Jackson on the campaign trail come and speak, and, gave him the spark to say that I can do this. And both of them, were successful. Obviously, Jesse Jackson didn't win the presidency, but I'm talking about, won a primary or two in terms of bringing new voices and new people into it, and speaking about justice and speaking about the community. Howard Washington did the same thing. And when Howard Washington was running in DC, there were white people. There was white flight after he won. He's gonna destroy the city. All of this other type of stuff, and it didn't happen. So I just want people, as we say in hip hop, respect the architects. And it bought, especially now with Reverend Jackson in poor health. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of the next year or so. This is a man whose legacy needs to be respected, and it needs to be acknowledged in these various spaces and places. And this takes nothing away from Mamdani's great campaign. But the idea from the media to act as if, this 34-year-old individual created this incredible movement and so on and so forth, I think it's really problematic and disrespectful to the legacy of so many other people. And look, even as relates to this conversation about affordability, some of y'all have heard me in other videos talk about, Kamala Harris had a message on affordability and didn't run on identity politics, and people don't even want to give her credit for that. And people can maybe talk about maybe she didn't have the mobilization effect of an Obama and so on and so forth. Look, she had 107 days. But the fact of the matter is, there is a history in this community, particularly from black candidates who run for office, of galvanizing peoples in ways that other candidates prior to them have not. And to give Mamdani not only give him all of the credit for this as if he's the inventor of this, as well as label any politician who runs in the future on some type of affordability message or some type of message of inclusivity and respect for justice for human rights, and say this is the Mamdani of Memphis, this is the Mamdani of Minnesota, or the Mamdani of Massachusetts. I think it's really lazy, it's intellectually lazy, and it's factually incorrect. And I think that we all need to do a better job in acknowledging the history, respecting the legacies of people who ran campaigns similar, beforehand, and just do a better job of respecting the architects. And this takes nothing away from Mamdani's great campaign. Let me know what you all think. Let's sign up. Let's get to 25,000 subscribers. Hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that share button. Get that best-selling book, Lies About Black People, How to Combat Racist Stereotypes and Why It Matters. And let's keep it moving, y'all. Remember, why settle for outstanding when you can be upstanding? Peace.